Good night, everyone, and welcome. Finally, good things come to those who wait for tonight's Board of Education Candidates Forum. I'm Gretchen Davinsky, the president of Montclair PTAC, and on behalf of PTAC, the League of Women Voters, AAPI Montclair, Montclair NAACP, and AIM Aging in Place, or Aging in Montclair, excuse me. We welcome you to hear a lively conversation and learn about the candidates for the upcoming Board of Education election.
Hi, I'm Susan Shin Anderson. We are so excited to present this opportunity for all of you to hear directly from all of the candidates on the issues and help voters make more informed decisions when casting their ballot. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone here and everyone watching at home. I hope you're joining us on live stream and on Channel 34. And we also thank you for actively engaging in the democratic process in this way. So we have a lot to get through. All of our candidates are actually here today, which we're very excited about. And we have a lot of questions that we want to get through. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Wendy McNeil, who is the chair of voter services for the League of Women Voters, Montclair area.
So, good evening. I feel like we're Judy Garland and you know, this was crazy and I apologize for it, for having you wait, but thank you for waiting. And you're certainly an indication that democracy is meaningful to you and voting is meaningful to you. And I greatly appreciate that. We all do. My name is Wendy McNeil and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I am the volunteer director for voter services of the League of Women Voters of the Montclair area. And on behalf of the League, I welcome you and I thank you for your patience. As you may know, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. That means we don't back any candidates and we don't back any political parties. And tonight what we have done is to partner with several Montclair organizations, AAPI, NAACP, AIM Montclair, and PTAC. And why I'm so proud of this particular collaboration is because it shows the diversity that is Montclair, and certainly something that we should all be very proud of. And as a member of the League, we are hoping that this partnership continues, and we hope that we will have a nice long relationship with these particular groups. As a member of the League, I would be remiss in not encouraging you to vote. If you are not registered, you have until the day after tomorrow, Tuesday, October 17th, right, to vote. So you go to vote411.org, that's vote411.org to register. Early voting is from October 28th to November 5th, and the deadline to apply for a mail-in ballot is Halloween, October 31st. And of course, you must vote, and you must encourage everyone to vote. Local elections, statewide elections are as important as federal elections. So please do your due diligence. Let's keep democracy alive and vote. Without further ado, I would like to introduce to you the moderator of this panel. She's coming to us from the League of Women Voters of Wayne, Kathy Kazan. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Good evening, and thank you to the Montclair Area League of Women Voters, along with co-sponsors Aging in Montclair, Montclair NAACP, PTA Council, and our candidates for being here. Candidates are seated in groups of 3. There are 3 candidates running independently and 6 candidates running as 2 slates. You are not obligated to vote for every member of a slate. You still vote for the individual. I will be your moderator for this evening and will begin by introducing the candidates. The 9 candidates vying for 3 seats on the Montclair Board of Education are Alex Binkley, Stuart Bell. I'm sorry? Oh, they spelled that wrong. Sorry. Thank you for correcting that. Kimberly Robinson Santos. And please hold applause until the end. And running as the slate Progress, Integrity, and Dedication, we have Allison Silverstein, Melanie Deischer, Phaedra Dunn. Running as the slate A Brighter Tomorrow, Will Novak, Jessica Glass, Theodore Graham. In the interest of time and addressing multiple topics, candidates have been broken up into 3 groups. We will begin by asking 3 questions of Group A in random order. We will then move on to Group B for another 3 questions, and finally Group C. We will then repeat the process until 18 questions have been posed. Candidates will begin with a 90-second opening statement in the order I've chosen, followed by prepared community questions. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer. Please pay attention to the timekeepers. Once you've begun speaking, the timekeepers will signal at 30 your sentence so we can move on. We will then continue with 1-minute closing statements in reverse order. Finally, we will conclude with important election information. Let's begin. Theodore Graham.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Theodore Graham. I am running for Board of Education because as an educator, education isn't just something I do. It is who I am. It's in my bones. It's in my DNA. Also because this community is in my blood. And I believe in the values that I was raised on in this community, values of a shared community, of cultural and intellectual diversity, a diversity that makes us stronger when we work together. As a board member, I hope to bring oversight on policies and procedures that allow Montclair to rise again to the innovative edge of education programming and serving all of our students with the best possible outcomes so they can become empowered adults and continue to change the world for the better. Thank you.
Phaedra Dunn.
Good evening. My name is Phaedra Dunn. I am a psychotherapist and educator. I am a current member of the board. I am first and foremost a mom of an 8th grader in the district. I began doing work in the district when my son was in elementary school, starting with book chat and continued positions throughout. I am passionate about education, passionate about equity and inclusiveness. I am passionate about making sure our community is focused on all of our marginalized learners so that we're able to bring those learners up and the benefits of all of our students. I am passionate about but I'm excited to be here this evening and excited to answer any questions that the community wants to submit.
Continue. The people at home are having a hard time hearing, so please lean into your mic and speak directly into it. Next opening is Kimberly Robinson Santos.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Kimberly Robinson Santos, and I'm running for the Montclair Board of Education because I feel that I bring a unique lens, and that lens is because at one point or another, I have sat in every stakeholder's position. I was born and raised here in Montclair and went through the Montclair public school system as a student. I've been a parent here in Montclair with 2 children that went through the Montclair public school system and also graduated from Montclair High School. I was a teacher here in Montclair for 4 years, and eventually I became an administrator. I was an administrator for 14 years and went on at one point to be the director of a graduate level Master's of Arts and Teaching program at Montclair State University and an adjunct professor within the Department of Teaching and Learning. I've also had membership on several boards within Montclair, and as well as several organizations where my focus was education. I was a member of the Montclair YMCA board and the chair of the education committee, as well as the board of Succeed Together and Family Connections. Last but not least, currently, I work with other educators around the country, and I try to bring all of that experience to my passion and desire to work with the other members of the Montclair Board of Education and keeping Montclair the standard of excellence that it's always been. I have the memory and the history of this town, and I have the vision to go forward. Thank you. Jessica Glass.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I am Jessica Glass. I'm currently running for the Board of Ed. I grew up here in Montclair. Very, very proud of my education here. And the reason why I'm running for Board of Ed, quite simply, is as a member of the community, it has made me very sad to hear of some of the quality of education that students, especially graduates from the high school, have received when I've talked to my friends that have had recent graduates. And because I had such a good quality of education, I really want to figure out what is contributing to that and get some sort of answers and listen to all the parties that contribute to everything. So thank you.
Melanie Deischer.
Hi, my name's Melanie Deischer. I'm an occupational therapist and mom of 3 boys who have gone through the Montclair school system, Nishawayne, Hillside, Glenfield, and high school, 2 presently at the high school. I've been involved in their school communities and began attending Board of Ed meetings because of 2 of my son's struggles with reading. At a CPAC meeting, I learned from a Montclair State professor that while it's human nature to want to advocate and fight for our own kids, to get services for them, to pay for private tutoring, when we do those things only for our child, we allow the system to remain broken. So I felt motivated to start going to Board of Ed meetings and ask for early screening and effective literacy instruction for all students. I learned a lot, and this motivated me to run for the Board of Ed election in March of 2022. So my time on the board has actually been quite short, but in this amount of time, we have started on a lot of really great initiatives. Universal pre-K, the passing of the bond referendum to fix our long neglected facilities, adjusting instructional minutes so all kids can show up at the high school ready to learn at their maximum potential. Community schools so all our learners feel safe and supported. The list just goes on. To stay here and see these changes through. Stability matters. Thank you.
Stuart Ball.
Evening. My wonderful wife, Sarah Mastalone, who's a teacher and educator, and I came here in 1984 when our oldest was just ready for public school. We were passionately looking for a public school that was both diverse and high quality. We found Montclair. Our kids came through here and thrived. We were involved in many of the initial initiatives that were put in place by Dr. Anand and others. I was fortunate that after Alex completed high school and had played in the soccer program, the head coach here, Jack Weber, asked me to step in as an assistant coach with the soccer program, which I did for 9 years. I'm totally taken by the value of sports in high school, the lessons to be learned in cooperation, commitment, effort, teamwork, losing, winning, and perspective. I then also have been a litigator and have had the opportunity to represent the teachers in Newark for the NTU after the attack by the Christie administration on teachers and their unions. So I've been representing teachers. I've also represented in my legal practice 2 board members, one from Montclair and one from Jersey City. My major commitment, however, is that public education for all is a core value for this society. It's under attack from many directions. It's something that we must defend.
Will Novak.
Good evening. My name is Will Novak, and I would first like to thank everybody here and everybody watching for taking time out of their weekends to get to know all the candidates. I'm running for the Board of Ed because I've been extremely passionate about education. I worked for 9 years as an instructor at Glenridge Taekwondo. I also worked as an assistant teacher at Driscoll Elementary, a school in Brookline, Massachusetts. If I'm elected, what I'll bring to the board is a more recent experience of our students. Because I recently graduated, my experiences are not far removed from what current students are facing. I've seen the best of the system, such as the teachers who give their all to teaching every day, teachers like Mr. Rizaldi, who was my sophomore history teacher, or even the reason why I'm here today. I've also, however, seen parts of the system that need improvement. I remember needing to fight for my accommodations from the school and from the district. If I'm elected, I hope to use accountability to answer a lot of these areas that need improvement. Thanks so much for your time.
Allison Silverstein.
Good evening. I'm Allison Silverstein. I want to thank the community partners for putting this forum together for us tonight. I'm hoping by the end of this evening, people who don't know me will know a little bit more about me and what I stand for. I'm a lawyer by trade, a 14-year Montclair resident, but most proudly, I'm a mother of a 5th grader at Hillside and a 7th grader at Buzz Aldrin. My son is in a special education self-contained classroom and has been a part of the special education system here in Montclair since he was 3 years old. I've been involved in the schools pretty much since his first day in kindergarten back at Nishaway, I see one of my former PTA cohorts in the back. I got involved initially for my kid. And I remember very early on going to a CPAC meeting, and one of the leaders reminded us that it's not about raising our child's boat. It's about raising all of the boats. And that's why I became more involved, trying to improve the system to work better for all of the children. We chose the words progress, integrity, and dedication for our campaign. As Melanie stated, progress is just starting, and we need continuity to continue this forward. We have made some concrete changes for the first time in a long time, and we need this to continue forward. Integrity, because it's such an important piece of who I am. And finally, dedication, because we care about the kids. It's all about the kids at the end of the day. Everything we do is focused on the children and what's best for them. I brought my, okay, thank you.
And finally, Alex Binkley.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Binkley. Professionally, I'm a COO and General Counsel at a venture capital fund, working with super young companies to help them succeed. Recreationally, I'm a runner and a bike racer and have been involved in everything from coaching Montclair United to working on the Northeast School Action Team for Partnership, the SATP. Both my parents worked in public education. My father, a university dean, and my mother was everything from a math teacher through a superintendent of multiple school districts. So many conversations in my house revolved around functional, effective education. Most importantly, I'm a dad of 2 at Northeast, and I'm running for BOE for them. Having had kids in the district for 4 years now, I've seen over and over again how the district falls short on communication, transparency, and efficiency. I've seen Montclair fail to respond to principals who brought them candidates for open positions, leading to Northeast still missing a tech teacher and a teacher for its magnet, Global Studies. I've seen Montclair set a budget that prioritizes central office spending over special ed and standard education. I've seen Montclair misread its own teacher's contract in a way that hurt children and teachers alike. I've seen Montclair fail to enact simple policies that would get us off the merry-go-round of firing and rehiring teachers every year. I've seen Montclair go against its own stated goals of equity and access in favor of supporting only the squeaky wheels. I'm running because we need to bring communication, transparency, and efficiency back to our district. We need a board that will not just rubber stamp our central office's policies, but will truly understand what's going on in the district and guide our central office to work for students and teachers, not the other way around.
Okay, now we move on to Group A, who will receive 3 questions in random order. Starting with Will Novak, the first question is, I'll be swallowing it. The first question is, do you have any financial conflicts of interest, such as an employer who provides services or products to the district? And if so, how would you handle this if elected? Again, first, Will Novak.
I have absolutely no financial conflicts of interest. I work for no company that provides any services for the district. However, if I ever did, I would recuse myself from those votes, as it would still represent a conflict of interest.
Allison Silverstein.
My answer is no as well. I work for an insurance company for the last 14 years. My husband works for the federal government. We have no interest in the financial gains of the school or any type of educational organizations. And as Mr. Novak said, I hold my ethical obligations very high, and I always recuse myself from anything that could be possibly seen as a conflict of interest.
Alex Binkley.
I also hold no conflicts with anyone who does business with the district. My company invests in a huge number of companies. Some of them are ed tech companies. We pretty much don't ever sell to districts. We are pretty much everything that provides extra help for kids, extra help for families. We really think a lot about wanting to invest in things that are the best for our families, and we draw a bright line at things that would not be that. If there were anything that were to provide a conflict with the district, as my fellow candidates said, of course I would recuse myself. I would make it very known to my fellow candidates, and I would move on.
Next question. And first up will be Allison Silverstein. Special education needs in our district continue to expand across all grades. Every year, the district struggles to have enough trained special education teachers, paraprofessionals, and therapists to provide the education and services the special education students are required to have by law. How will you, as a board member, hold the district accountable to make sure the needs of this student population are being met? Again, Allison is up first.
Well, as a current member of the Special Education Committee, which I actually worked to create because it used to be part of another committee and we didn't spend enough time, I felt, discussing special education. We now have a separate committee. We work very closely with the Pupil Services Department. I'm very excited to have a new director of Pupil Services who has been in the district for several years, has a commitment to our children, is highly intelligent and ready to effectuate change in the system. And if I am elected, I will continue the work we've started because I believe this is incredibly important to make sure our children's needs are being met. And not just by having a certain amount of people in a classroom, but we're talking about curriculum now and making sure our children are being challenged in what they learn in the classroom and making sure that everything that they need is being addressed and that our children are included too, that they're a part of the community and that others learn about them and that know that they're a part of their community and accept them for who they are. Thank you.
Okay, we're getting calls again for speaking louder. Next up, same question, Alex Binkley.
Obviously, special education is massively important. It's massively important in our district, and it's massively important in every district in America and around the world. It's important because we have children with all sorts of different needs. Our current board passed a budget this year that defunded special education. It took $700,000 away from last year's budget for special education this year. It also defunded regular classroom teaching, and it increased central office spending by 5%. Of course, I would work to get that budget back into the classroom, back into our regular classrooms, and especially back into our special education classrooms where it belongs.
Will Novak, same question.
I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was very young. I've been personally touched by this question. Frankly, there is no excuse for this district to not have the services that it needs for any non-traditional students. If I were to be elected to the board, first is that we need to give our qualified employees enough resources to be able to do their jobs effectively. We have people who are really good at what they do, but they don't feel supported by the district and they need help. Secondly is, as more services are needed, the district needs to do a better job of attracting qualified people. Very, yeah, thank you.
Next question, still Group A. First to answer will be Alex Binkley. How many Montclair Board of Ed meetings did you attend in the year before deciding to run for BOE? None, fewer than 4, at least 5, hardly ever, missing a meeting? What topics did you raise in your comments at the BOE meetings? Again, first is Alex.
I've attended in person fewer than 4. I've watched many of them on stream. I've gone back over my time here while I've been running and watched many of the ones that I have not watched on stream and watched them again. I have not commented, and the reason I haven't commented is because the issues that have affected my children in the schools were issues that affected a classroom, that affected a small group of people, that affected more than just my children usually, but honestly did not rise to the level of taking everybody's time at a Board of Ed meeting.
Same question, Will Novak.
I've attended fewer than 4 meetings in public. However, I have watched them on stream. Part of the reason why I have not attended previous meetings is because I have not felt represented by previous boards. Many of my students, several of my coworkers, have had to go up to the board year after year and plead that programs like the arts are protected. I've watched them go, I've watched them make the same cases every single year, and I've watched them have to go back to the board and plead again with these programs not to be canceled. The reason why I'm running is because I want to be a voice that represents the current students. I know how important these issues are, and I'll always make sure that these current students feel represented. Thank you.
Finally, Allison Silverstein, same question.
Well, as a current board member, I have attended every single board meeting for the last 3 years since September of 2020 when I was appointed. I don't think I've actually missed one in all of that time. Before that, I also attended many board meetings. I can't remember how many. I've been coming since my son was in kindergarten, and he's now a 7th grader. I was the leader of the Special Education Parents Advisory Council for 3 years, so I came to the mic several times advocating for this community, be it for transportation, various different issues. I've spoken out on behalf as a Hillside parent about things that were going on at Hillside. I've been a very involved member of the community and very involved in the schools again since my son was in kindergarten.
Okay, moving on to Group B. First question, and the first to respond will be Jessica Glass. Are you aware or concerned about staffing cuts that seem to target schools in the 4th Ward, the Arts Magnet schools, specifically Nishuane, Hillside, and Garfield? How will you ensure that the Arts Magnet and these schools are... Glenfield, how will you ensure that the Arts Magnet and these schools are not targets for staffing and programming cuts every year? How will you protect these schools and programs in your BOE position? Again, first up is Jessica.
The first thing that I would do is really try to get a sense of what needs to be I apologize. The first thing that I would do is I am aware that there has been staffing cuts in these schools and in the 4th Ward. The way that I would address that as a Board of Ed member is really try to get an overall sense of what has been contributing to that and how we can prevent it from happening in the future.
As a present board member who was at the board during those budget cuts this year, I do not believe that that is what actually happened. Buildings were tasked with having responsible budgets, that we matched teacher the amount of staff with the student enrollment at each school. This occurred across the district, not just at the South End schools. And it's unfortunate that that's the story that has been perpetuated. Building principals were involved in looking at their scheduling and looking at how many staff they needed. I believe that in this next year's budget cycle, that these building budgets will start happening in November with the goal of it being a much earlier time to be proactive in their planning and really be much more effective in matching what the scheduling needs are of the building with the amount of staff they need. Thank you.
Stuart Ball.
The fact that this discussion focuses on the schools in the Fourth Ward raises the issue of diversity yet again. The board sets policy, the administration implements it. This board must reinvigorate the priority of racial balance. We dealt with that some years ago in 2015 when we were looking at what was called the achievement gap, which we now look at as the access and outcome gap. There was an effort done, there was a commission made, there was recommendations, most of which I think were not implemented, and if they were unsuccessful. So for me, setting the policy for this district to refocus and recommit to diversity and equality is a top priority.
Next question. First will be Melanie Deisher. There is concern about the proliferation of movements to ban books in American schools. If elected, how will you work to protect students' freedom to read, teachers' freedom to teach material that centers diverse experiences and perspectives without fear of censorship? Melanie.
I strongly believe that as a board, we would support never banning books. And there was recently an Essex County School Board vote where only 3 districts voted against it. Montclair voted in favor of it, and we also talked as a board of making our own proclamation to never support book banning. I also believe that this is a stretch of the duties of the board. The board does not administer the district. The board should never be responsible for choosing or limiting the access to whatever the teacher feels they want to teach in their class. We want to encourage freedom of thought and independent thinking, and I can't, as a board member, I would never allow that to happen. Thank you.
Stuart Ball, same question.
Yes, I said in my opening remarks that one of my primary concerns is the attack on public education and the freedom of public education, and this is an example of it. And yes, it does happen even in our neighboring towns. So one is support our librarians, support our teachers, and commit that this kind of denial of history, denial of education, denial of truth, denial of fact simply doesn't happen in Montclair. And I think this is a town that we could make sure that happens. This is a thoughtful, progressive, engaged town. This town will not succumb to that.
Same question, Jessica Glass.
It's interesting. I had a conversation with someone actually a couple days ago who I look to him as one of my historians of Montclair. He has graduated in the early 60s at Montclair High and has really talked to me about the landscape of what Montclair, especially Upper Montclair, used to be before my family and I moved here in the 80s. And I say that because he's completely on the opposite, raised on the opposite end of town of what I was. He's conservative, everything, but I've learned a lot from him. And I think that is the beauty of the diversity of this town, and the beauty of what we all strive to continue to create. There's absolutely no way that I would limit thinking and limit teaching and limit the ability for students to express themselves and learn about the history across all cultures. Absolutely no way.
Okay, next question. Up first will be Stuart Ball. Montclair's magnet school system for desegregation has been a national model. With the changes in demographics in Montclair, is the magnet program still needed? Stuart.
Absolutely still needed. It was put in place as a result of litigation many years ago, and it's worked. There are still problems with the district, as we know. But when my kids went to school, these schools were integrated, these classrooms were integrated, they were balanced, and they worked. Demographic shift, the issue is the same: diversity, equity, and support. The magnet system has been working to do that. It will continue to do that. And if I'm on the board, I will make that a priority to see that that stays in place.
Jessica, same question.
Yes, I agree. That's one of the things that has made, the magnet is one of the things that has made Montclair unique, and that's definitely something that I would support. And yeah, thanks.
Melanie, same question.
The magnet system has always been an integral part, since 1977, of Montclair's educational system, and no one on this board has any plans of changing that. We fully support the magnet system. The magnet system is part of our mission statement as what makes this community able to provide innovative, always forward-thinking education. So we provide busing, we allow the different buildings to support their magnet themes, and nothing about that will change. Thank you.
Okay, Group C, you're finally up. First question, and it will go to Theodore Graham. The striving toward racial justice and equity for all students has been a hallmark of the district. What would be your priorities in advancing racial justice in the schools? Theodore.
Well, right now, I one of the two hills I would die on as a board member. One's the magnet system. The other is the restorative justice program that's come to town. It's been great watching it happen. I'd like to see it expand. Because equity starts with our children. It starts with teaching them the lessons that equity is a strength, that our diversity is a strength. The other thing, and it's having policies and programs that support that, right? It's curriculums that attend not just to New Jersey law, that's thankfully expanded to be more inclusive, but to make sure that a more inclusive curriculum, that a curriculum that speaks to all of our students is actually being implemented. And also looking at programs of leveling and tracking and how that's reaching all of our students.
Phaedra, same question.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. The striving...
I'm going to turn...
Okay, can we please have quiet? Thank you. The striving, we're doing the best we can with the mics. This is apparently all you're going to get as far as sound is concerned. The striving toward racial justice and equity for all students has been a hallmark of the district. What would be your priorities in advancing racial justice in the schools?
I think that there is a many-pronged approach to this, and one of the things I would look at is academic interventions, social-emotional interventions, and wraparound services in the community for all folks within the community. And so on the academic level, we would need to provide, deepen the professional development for our teachers. We want to look at students as an individual on an academic and a social emotional level. We want to be able to provide services for our families who may not be able to access services. So we want to improve access for students, for the community overall. I will delve in. I have 30 seconds left, but I would love to see us continually push for students socially, emotionally, academically, bringing the parents in more and at home. Thank you.
Kimberly Robinson Santos, same question. Sure.
The striving toward racial justice and equity for all students has been a hallmark of the district. What would be your priorities in advancing racial justice in the schools?
My priorities would include a few components. One would be I would want all employees of the district to participate in undoing racism training. I think that's an essential lens for anyone that works for this district in order to continue to support racial justice. I think we need to think about how we interview anyone that's coming into our schools. And there's different ways to do interviewing as opposed to just question and answer, so that you can really get to the meat of how someone feels in terms of racial justice, social justice, and equity. I think we have to keep an eye on our curriculum at all times. We have to create spaces for students to share and to talk and to collaborate with one another, because that is where the diversity piece comes into play. And I think it has to always be at the forefront of everything to do.
Okay, next question. First will be Phaedra Dunn. Perhaps the most important role for Board of Education members is hiring, evaluating, and supporting the superintendent. During your term of office, the superintendent's contract will be up for renewal. What stakeholders do you think should be involved in the process for evaluating whether the superintendent's contract should be renewed, and how would you include those stakeholders in the process? Again, Phaedra.
Wow, that is a many-pronged question. I would say that the community as a whole, along with the board members, do need to be involved with that. While we yearly evaluate the superintendent, and so we do have those things in place to evaluate him, I think that there is an important component in hearing from teachers, staff, community members, students, because those are all stakeholders in the school district, with the students being the most integral, important piece of this. But I think we need to be inclusive in hearing from all the community stakeholders, parents, teachers, staff, students, and anyone I'm missing. But yes, we do need to be thoughtful about the community in that process.
Kimberly, same question.
I believe all stakeholders should be involved, and I think we might need to even dig a little deeper in looking into the groups that we would bring together to get feedback that would contribute to the evaluation of the superintendent. I think there should be forums, as has been stated, for students, for teachers, for parents, community members, but I think we could also talk to central office employees. I think there should be conversations with the various unions that are within the town. I think they should be able to meet with custodial staff as a unit, security as a unit, our cafeteria staff as a unit. I think every faction that is a part of the Montclair Public School System should have a voice and be able to contribute about their experience.
Same question, Theodore.
Yeah, it starts with taking a look at the superintendent's evaluations, the detail that was collected on that, because like as the public, I know whoever's in charge of the personnel committee gets to see stuff that not everybody always gets to see. So it starts with those evaluations, but yes, Kim's absolutely right. It's you got to involve and see how the employees feel about him, see how his policies have been implemented and worked on the ground in real time. And then community conversations, right? Like when Dr. Pons was hired, there was an attempt to involve all the stakeholders, right? To involve the community members, to involve parents, to involve students. And it was hampered by what the world was going through at the time. And hopefully this time around, when it comes to his contract, all those stakeholders can be involved, and not just by survey or Zoom meeting, but by, community forums and conversations that are authentic and real, and you get a diversity of voices.
Next question, and Kimberly Robbins Santos, you will be first. What would you do to ensure that you represent the variety of community stakeholders in your role as a board member?
In my role as a board member, what I would do to ensure a variety of voices from stakeholders, am I repeating that correctly? Okay, thank you. Make myself available, create scenarios where I can meet with those different factions. I know that there is definitely a delineation between the role of the Board of Education members. I'm not going to just, go into a school and start talking to teachers. That wouldn't be appropriate. But making myself available and creating opportunities where I can have people, if they want to come to me and talk and have conversations, making those avenues known and making sure I have clear lines of communication for community members, students, parents, staff, etc.
Same question, Theodore?
So yes, it starts with availability. It starts with being out there as part of this community. But also I would probably repeat a lot of the things I do as a library board member. Conversations with patrons, conversations with the director, in this case it would be the superintendent, collecting input from staff. It would be surveying the community, and just conversation, and collecting information. The more people we hear from, the various stakeholders, the various groups in town, there's a lot of groups that exist, right? Like even this forum has brought together a lot of important community groups that should often and always be heard from in anything when it comes to policy and decisions, etc.
Same question, Phaedra.
I'm going to ask you to repeat it, please.
Absolutely. What would you do to ensure that you represent the variety of community stakeholders in your role as a board member?
Currently in my role, I do a lot of listening. And, one of the things I've learned as a board member, often you have folks who will come to board meetings and often you're hearing things for the first time. And that's sort of where you are on the ground level, hearing what's going on, getting a greater understanding so that you can create a response, because often we don't know what's going on in the individual schools, in the different organizations. We are also tasked with attending meetings for various stakeholders in the community. So we do represent and go out to a wide variety of different meetings in the community, and we're each tasked with doing that. In addition to, there are just a lot of other places. There are folks who will never show up at meetings and don't belong to organizations who have the, often marginalized, our students who are marginalized, who don't have as big a voice. And so you do really have to go in and talk with people and have conversations and get an understanding so you know what's happening with those students who are often the most underserved students as well.
Okay, back to Group A. First question, and the first person to answer will be Will Novak. Plans for a new baseball field at Woodman were released publicly this week. Please tell us if you support the plan for the current baseball field, and for anyone currently on the board, how would you have done things differently, if at all? Will.
I do think that it is important to support the sports programs that our high school has. However, I also found the lack of communication that surrounded the development of Woodman Field to be unacceptable. I think that a large part of being on this board is being accessible and accountable to the people of Montclair. And even if I personally support the development of Woodman Field, I think that it's still more important to listen to what the community wants. Ultimately, being a part of the board is representing not just your own opinions, but the community's. And if I were to do things differently, I would have the board be much more transparent, alert people much earlier in the process, and ultimately understand what exactly the community expected and what the community wanted.
Same question, Allison.
I'll first start off by saying we're a board of committees. That's the way the Montclair Board of Education is currently structured. And so people sometimes misunderstand the process. The facilities team, the committee, was the first to have seen the plans and to discuss these things. The majority of us on the board hadn't seen it until the public saw it. That's just the process. That's not out of the ordinary. That's just the way it works because, again, we're committee structure. If I could change anything about what happened, I agree that the communication as to how this project was developed didn't go the way it was supposed to have gone. We have a community advisory committee. The reason why we formed this was so there would be representatives of the community who would be involved in the process, who would see these things even before the full board saw these things. And I was surprised to have heard that that didn't happen. I have expressed my dissatisfaction with that. And we have also already started to discuss how to better communicate regarding the projects moving forward. We discussed the idea of town
That's your
halls.
time.
Okay, thank you.
And finally, on this question, Alex Binkley.
Woodman Field was a classic example of our district not communicating with stakeholders and not being transparent about our processes. It was an example of our district doing work under the covers, not looking at what other people needed, not looking at how it affected other people. And then it created a huge amount of angst and issue on the back end. Everybody agrees that Woodman Field needs to be renovated. I think all the community members here believe that Woodman Field needs to be renovated. What people disagree about is how this happened and how it affects them. We need to push the district. We need to push central office to do that work on the front end. Over and over again, they fail to do the work on the front end, and it leaves them flat-footed and fighting back on the back end.
Okay, there's a bit of a lead up, but there's just a one-sentence question. According to the district website, which states the rules and power of the board, it states the board is responsible for the development of policy for the employment of the superintendent who shall carry out its policies through the development and implementation of regulations. The board is responsible for evaluating the effectiveness of its policies and their implementation, and this includes setting and evaluating goals in educational and financial areas. So here's the question. As an elected member of the BOE, how will you increase accountability and transparency with the superintendent during your term? And first up will be Allison.
I think this is something that we've actually worked on a bit in the last year. The current board members, myself and my running mates, we believe in accountability. We have made this very clear that that is our expectation from the top to the bottom. Everybody is accountable for their actions. I can't remember the question. Hopefully I'm still kind of answering it. This year we have a strategic planning process that we will actually be starting in a few weeks. And this is the way that we will get the community involved more in deciding how we want to see things move forward, what we want to see from the district from here out. So it's hard to understand what the board does until you're on the board. And, you know, we have the one employee, it's the superintendent. The employees below the superintendent are not our employees. That is the superintendent's job to manage those employees. And we work together with him to set what the expectations of the board are. We would continue with this moving forward if I were elected. Thank you.
Same question, Alex Binkley.
As Allison just said, the one employee of the board is the superintendent. And we have a superintendent who is, again, constantly being reactive, not being proactive. We have a superintendent who every time I've tried to work on something, every time we've had issues that need to be brought there, he's not available, except he's told me, if you show up at my office, I'll speak with you. Because if a parent shows up at my office, I have to speak with them. That's not a way to run the district. The district needs to be run by somebody who is going to be proactive, who is going to be constantly looking at what is around them, who's going to constantly be looking at what employees they need under them to run the district effectively. The district does not need to be run by somebody who's always, again, on the back foot. We either need to work with this superintendent to figure that out, or we need to reevaluate where we need to be going forward.
Will Novak, same question.
Could you repeat the question one more time? Your microphone.
According to the district website, which states the rules and power of the board, it states the board is responsible for the development of policy and for the employment of a superintendent who shall carry out its policies through the development and implementation of regulations. The board is responsible for evaluating the effectiveness of its policies and their implementation. This includes setting and evaluating goals in educational and financial areas. Here's the question. As an elected member of the BOE, how will you increase accountability and transparency with the superintendent during your term?
Regarding the current superintendent, I think that if I'm elected, it would be fair to evaluate him myself, given that I'll have data that I currently do not have because I'm not currently on the board. I also think it would be fair, until at least his contract is up, to say if he's not going up to my standards, hey, we want you to do better. Ultimately, it comes down to if he does or not. If he does better, I'm fully willing to continue working with him and continue helping him improve so that we have more accountability and transparency with the board, the staff, and the parents. However, if this does not improve in a way that I would like or that I think that the community would like to see, then it would be time to consider a new superintendent. Regarding being more transparent and accountable, I think that he could be a little bit more accessible to parents and people in the district, and I would be happy to work with him on allowing him to be more accessible to anybody who has questions.
Okay. Next question. First up will be Alex Binkley. Many people have different ideas about what is absolutely core and essential to have strong and excellent public schools. It is all important, including the teachers, paraprofessionals, building principals, district central office, and quality of school buildings and facilities. So, A, give us an idea into your thinking. If you had to name just one of these things as the heart and soul of our schools, what would it be? And B, what would you do as a board member to support this core feature of our schools? Alex.
Clearly, our students need to be safe. That's everybody, I think, agrees on that. The heart and soul, though, of our schools is our teachers. Our teachers need to feel like they are valued, need to feel like they're the professionals that they are. They need to be given the leeway to teach. They need to be given the leeway to understand what their students need and to make their students as effective as they can and prepare the students for every environment they might see in the real world. We have a broad swath of students who are going to end up in a huge number of professions. I've spent time over the past few months with dozens of parents, teachers, even spent time with the president of the MEA to understand what is going on there and how teachers feel about the schools, how teachers feel about the lives they're living right now, and we need to improve that for our students. Our students clearly are what matters, and if our teachers are happy and can teach them, our students will be successful.
Will Novak, same question.
I believe the heart and soul of this district is the opportunities that it affords its students. I think that opportunities such as the arts programs, such as any program, whether it be math, art, history, English, all need to be not only protected, but expanded upon. Building off of what Alex just said, I also think that teachers are the blood of this heart and soul. I think that supporting teachers is the best way to ensure that these opportunities continue to exist. Actions such as teachers being unaware if their contracts are going to be renewed threatens the heart and soul because it threatens the opportunity of our students. And if I were elected to the board, I would change these policies so that teachers are no longer guessing and stressed if they're going to have a job.
Allison, same question.
My answer would be the heart and souls are, I would say, the people in the buildings every day. So it's the students, the teachers, the staff, everyone from top to bottom who is inside while our children are learning. To support them, I think one of the things we're working on, we discuss a lot, especially through the district leadership team, which we've been participating in, is professional development. Last year, there was a project to work with teachers to help determine better what types of professional development our teachers are looking for. Another thing we had discussed but really hasn't gotten off the ground, which I would effort to continue to do if I were elected, is a new teacher academy. We have new teachers who come into our school who aren't necessarily getting the support that they need to learn the ropes. It's like with law school, they teach you how to think like a lawyer, but not be a lawyer. Same thing with teaching. We need to support our new teachers, give them mentors. We've developed team leaders to help coach teachers who need assistance, and working more towards giving all of these teachers, not just new teachers, but all of our teachers, the resources and training that they need to give our kids the education that they deserve.
Back to Group B. First question, and the first person to answer will be Jessica Glass. Is there a need to improve the way Board of Education meetings are organized and run, and if so, how? Jessica.
Yes, I do believe that there is a need to fix the way that the board meetings are run. I would suggest after, if I was a new board member, after kind of assessing how they're running, what the strengths and weaknesses are of the current meetings, and figuring out then what needs to be changed as a result, what's worked in the past, and keep those and change what is not.
Melanie, same question.
I believe we have a responsibility to be equitable and to be there and accessible for all community members to show up. Board meetings are not to have a meeting with the public, but rather to have a meeting in public so that you as a community can observe our work. But for me, that means holding meetings in a reasonable amount of time and at a reasonable time of day so that families with young children, people who work the next day can actively participate and listen. So I think as a board member, I would like to see us really adhere to coming out at 7:30. I think that's a big one. And then maybe really be mindful of how many presentations we're having and how we're lining up our calendars so we really are, not that as a board member I'm willing to stay late and do the work, that's not my issue, but in being respectful of and encouraging equity and community involvement, that we run an efficient and timely meeting. Thank you.
And Stuart, same question.
I've been to meetings, and I understand that they can be tedious and long sometimes, but they have to be. And I'd like to see the agendas published early so that people can see what's up and decide whether they come or not. And I'd also like to see the public comment section move to the first thing, so that the public doesn't have to wait to have business done that they're not interested in to have their comments.
Next question. How would you approach handling issues where there is a conflict of opinion between the administration and the board? First is Melanie.
I believe as a Board of Ed member, we only have power as a collective, so it's as important as a board to, as Allison explained earlier, we run things through communities, vet issues through communities, and often rely on those to go forward as a board. But I have a responsibility to vote my own personal opinion. But once we decide as a board, that's how we vote, and that's the end. Then we say, regardless of my personal opinion, this is the board, I support their decision. And I feel like we have sometimes voted against what the superintendent believes because we feel our obligation is also to reflect the voices of the community we live in. And I would always vote listening to both sides. I would never, just because the superintendent thought that was the way to go, vote that way. And I feel very strongly that's the responsibility of a board member.
Stuart, same question.
Yeah, if I understood the question correctly, it's a simple one, which is you vote your conscience after listening to all of the input, and if it's contrary to the position of the superintendent, so be it. That's your vote. And if that's the board decision, that's the board decision. You have to do it fearlessly. That's the only thing I would add.
Jessica, same question.
Yes, I also think that it's very simple. Just listen to both sides, and if you disagree, then disagree. But yes, you have to go ahead and go forward.
Okay, next question. First up will be Stuart. What do you believe is a sensible approach for schools when dealing with students who wish to change their names and pronouns without their parents' knowledge? What is the sensible policy to have for students who wish to use changing rooms according to their gender identity instead of their sex? Stuart.
The first step in that is to respect the student and respect the student's needs. It does become complicated if there is danger involved that the parents need to be advised of. That has to be a very sophisticated judgment made by the people in the schools who are trained to be able to make those judgments. First, respect the position of the students, and you don't out them if there's no need to. But if there is a need to, then you have to act, and you have to put the professionals in place and support them in making those decisions.
Same question. Jessica.
Yes, I do agree that number one, the first priority is the students. With that said, making sure that there is enough support for the students at the school with faculty and other additional resources to make sure that it is under the safest environment for them. Yeah. But they are the priority.
Melanie, same question.
We have a mandate from the state and a policy on the Board of Education that reflects this, Policy 5756, that supports students' rights in the school. And above all, I think we have to support a school as a safe space for students. Students come to school so they can be themselves and they can feel free in that environment, and it in no way impedes their learning. 5756 declares that we will never out a student to their parents, and I feel it's really important for folks to know that, for staff to know that they will always be supported by, and our students, they will always be supported by that policy to guide us, especially nowadays, because 3 school districts have gone back on that policy, and the state attorney general is in the process of suing those school districts for a violation of students' discrimination. Thank you.
Okay, back to Group C. First question, and the first person to answer will be Theodore Graham. Why is Montclair always addressing staff issues at the end of the year? Renewals, positions eliminated that need to be filled once school starts. How will you work with the BOE and central office to stabilize the school budget so we don't have surprises every spring? Theodore, first.
It's a planning issue. Was glad to hear, I think Allison said it, or maybe it was Melanie, that the budgeting process would start in November, which is when it should start. By now, the district knows its student enrollment. It can make predictions on enrollment. It can make predictions on necessary staff. Everybody knows that the budget can only grow by 2% next year, so you know what the budget's going to be, barring the board bringing a special vote to the public. So with that staffing, with that planning, a lot of that can be done now. It can be done in the months ahead so that there's no surprises. In fairness, that it might mean there might be hard choices. There's always hard choices to be made. But what matters is when hard choices have to be made, that there's transparency, that there's communication, and that there's forethought and planning and intention to those decisions, and that they're not happening in the public's eye. Oh, sorry, I didn't see a.
Thank you. Same question, Phaedra.
Oh boy, do I hate that time of year and having to be a part of that. This year, we sat with a number of other stakeholders and, again, sat to make the hard choices and try to, collaborate on these decisions that have to be made because of how school budgets are set up, because of the amount of money we get from, as a town, what we get from the taxpayers versus what we get from the state, versus the fact that transportation and other costs continue to grow at a rate of greater than 2%. So we are working earlier. As a person who's on the budgeting committee, finance committee, we are working even earlier to assure that we are not in the same position at the end of the year, because as board members, we feel no different than the community does when we're sitting and having to anguish over these types of decisions. So in being more transparent with the community and meeting earlier and doing all of the things that need to be done, our hope is for that to not happen again.
That's your time. Finally, Kimberly.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. Why is Montclair always addressing staff issues at the end of the year? Renewals, positions eliminated that need to be filled once school starts. How will you work with the BOE and central office to stabilize the school budget so we don't have surprises every spring?
Yeah, traditionally, springtime can be a very scary time within a school district, and I've experienced that myself in various districts. A lot of that depends on the timing of the budget, and once the overall district budget gets squared away, and then that funneling down to each individual school's budget. There are other things that become a factor in the process. The deadline and due dates for filing retirement papers, when people have to address if they're, giving 60-day or 30-day notice if they're going to come back the next year. Sometimes you don't find out about vacancies in a building until the end of the year. So there are quite a number of factors that play a role in that budgeting process, and unfortunately it does create that turmoil. If I was to become a board member, just making sure, again, transparency, putting checks and balances and measures in place to get the budget standardized and processed as soon as possible, and having those open lines of communication so that you can be aware of any changes that are coming.
Next question. First to answer will be Phaedra. Do you think the town should share pilot revenues with the district? If so, how can the BOE and district work with the town council to facilitate sharing of pilots with the schools? Phaedra.
Wow. I do think that we should be able to collaborate with one another on pilots. I think pilots only work if there is agreement with everyone. And for those at home, it's a payment in lieu of taxes. And there are businesses and buildings in the community. I live in one of the buildings that gets a payment in lieu of taxes. And so I do feel rather strongly about the fact that there's revenue that we can collect for this that would be helpful to the school, because it just, to the district, it allows us to be able to provide more services to our students and things of that nature. I would work very closely and work to collaborate so that we could come to something agreeable so that we are able to provide greater services to our students and balance our budget.
Kimberly, same question.
I was nodding my head off as you were speaking. I absolutely agree that some of those pilot resources should come to the school system. It just logical, it makes sense to me, and I think we can have conversations where we can create something to put in place where the Board of Ed is getting some of the money from those pilot funds. Absolutely.
Theodore, same question.
The short answer is yes, especially because it exists outside of the 2% cap. It would allow some flexibility, but the longer answer is, of course, it requires collaboration and work, hard work, sitting down with the council, finding places where that money would, because they'd have to, make cuts. But it would add a lot of flexibility to what the school board would deal with, especially, as it was mentioned, there are costs that are rising outside of 2%, that are outside of anybody's control. But to pay for more gas, do you cut a staff member, right? Like these hard decisions. So, it's not just pilots, but, increased grant funding, increased, but the increased grant funding, the pilot funding, extra sources of income that would allow more flexibility for the board.
Last question. First up will be Kimberly. What actions will you take to make the district budget process more transparent to all stakeholders? Kimberly.
The actions I would take will be whatever measures are within the realm of the process. There are some mandates in terms of information that can be shared. I know that there is a legal process in preparing that budget and reporting deadlines. So wherever we can be transparent, I would encourage that transparency. If it is to make sure that whatever meetings need to be held, whatever literature is supposed to go out to the community, whatever informational sessions need to be held, whatever needs to be in place, I would support those things while remaining in alignment with the process and the legalities of creating and sharing information in terms of the creation of the budget.
Theodore, same question.
Yeah, it starts with sharing the process first. Most people have no idea what the actual process is because it's complicated, it's bureaucratic, it's frustrating, it's annoying, it's a lot of things. But that doesn't mean that we can't be educated on it. We can't educate more people. We can't put out resources so they know what the steps are and what's happening along the way when possible. Bringing in stakeholders when appropriate, because there are legal issues where you can't always bring everybody in at every step, but bringing in stakeholders where appropriate to get the feedback. This way, the budget shows the values of our community and the importance of what we think we need in our schools.
Phaedra, same question.
Yes, I think that we need to do a lot of informational sessions and listening sessions so that our community stakeholders, all of you, everyone can first understand like what we are prioritizing in our budget, because that's the important thing. You have to set your priorities when you are building and thinking about your budget long term. There are just things and parts of the pie that you cannot change, and they are when you're talking about salaries and healthcare and transportation, and there are a number of other things, facilities management, all of those things, and hopefully this bond referendum brings that percentage down to a reasonable amount. But we do have to have listening sessions. We do have to be mindful of the process. We do have to have trust in our business administrator, who is the person who does build the budget. We have to trust in the committee that is over, the budgeting process, who also is making sure those things are coming, into play, and we're staying focused on what's important to us. But we do need to have listening sessions and information sessions with the community where we are giving information and taking in information. Thank you.
Okay, that was the last question. Now we're on to closing statements. 1 minute. Watch the timekeeper. First up is Alex Binkley.
It's vitally important that we have a school district that communicates with everybody in the district. It's vitally important that we have a school district that runs efficiently, that doesn't waste money, that doesn't waste people's time. We have two large issues coming up in the term of the next board. We have a superintendent contract to either be renewed or rethought. We have a teacher's contract to be renegotiated. I think everybody here needs to think about who they would like to manage those processes. You've listened to people, you've listened to everything everybody has to say. I would say, as a chief operating officer, as a lawyer, I've spent a huge amount of time running companies efficiently, a huge amount of time negotiating legal contracts. I think those things are vitally important. And I would ask you to think about those on November 7th when you come out to vote. Thank you.
Allison.
For years before I was on the board, and even in the first part of my term on the board, I felt like we talked a lot about what the problems are. This community is very good at pointing out what's wrong, what the problem is. In the last 18 months, I feel like we finally started to take concrete steps to fix the problems. Increased instructional time, working on the communication, free pre-K. All of these things are the concrete steps necessary to fix the problems. We've just gotten started, and we need continuity, and we need stability, to continue with the progress that we're making, because I feel like we're finally doing it after many years. I appreciate everyone's time this evening in listening, and when it comes to November 7th to vote, please think about what stability and continuity means to our community. Thank you.
Will Novak.
If I'm elected to the board, I hope to bring a more recent experience of Montclair students. I also hope that any students who are currently in our schools will feel represented. Ultimately, I'm running for the board because I'm passionate about this town and I'm passionate about our schools. I also think it's really important to be accessible and to be transparent to all the people in Montclair. If I'm elected to the board, I promise to make transparency and accessibility my most important goals. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you for listening to us on your Sunday night.
Stuart.
Thank you. As I said at the beginning, we must commit to defending free public education for all, at all costs, at all times. That's got to be as the board is a setter of policy, that's got to be a top policy. Readdressing the access and opportunity gap has to be a top policy. Transparency has to be a top policy. Pilots are interesting. Pilots should be shared with the district. The council is not inclined to do that. That may end up falling to you, working with us. That Margaret Mead quote comes to mind, which is, "Don't ever doubt that a small group of dedicated people can change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has." I look forward to working with you and making that happen.
Melanie.
Real change requires sustained attention, participation, and dedication. It's exciting to see all the positive changes that the district has undertaken, but it's important to acknowledge that there's still a lot of work to be done. That's what motivates me, the possibility of real positive change and growth. It's been an honor and privilege to serve this community, and I really hope for the opportunity to continue to do so. Thank you so much for your time tonight and for listening to all the candidates share their points of view.
Jessica.
Thank you again for taking your time out this evening and to listen to all of us. I really do think that transparency and accountability are the topmost issues that are important to me, and that I really would like to provide an ear to listen to all of the stakeholders in the community and figure out how we can continue to address some of the issues that are going on. And thank you very much.
Kimberly.
I'm extremely excited to be here at this point in my life. I feel like my entire career has prepared me for this time as an educator, as a teacher, as a vice principal. I have always kept children first in any decisions that I've made throughout my educational career, and I would continue to do that if I had the opportunity to serve on the board. I look forward to collaboration with the other members of the board. And as a former student of the Montclair Public Schools, a former parent of children that went through the Montclair Public Schools, I bleed blue and white, and I have that Mountie pride and the passion, the memory and history of this town that excites and ignites me to want to run for this position. And I also have the vision of where we can take the Montclair Public Schools. Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak with all of you.
Phaedra.
I am always excited and just invigorated by the amount of attention that people in this community put towards our students, our educational system. It it's in line with who I am as a person and as an individual. And while my son may not need me to sit here for him, I do sit here for all of those students who often don't have someone to represent them, our marginalized students, our Black and brown students whose parents may not be able to be here for the meeting. That is the voice I often try to bring in the room. I do want to say that it is my hope that I continually get to represent the community. I've enjoyed my time on the board, and thank you to all of you. It's late and we're still here, and I just want to say thank you.
Finally, Theodore.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out, for engaging with us. It gives me heart and hope to see it, because an engaged community is what it will take to make sustained and continued change in a positive direction. My lifetime as an educator, as my new lifetime as a parent, has given me a lot of perspective in a lot of different ways, and I hope that you entrust me to be a steward of this community and move forward positive change. I believe we need to take, as a board, work together to take a holistic approach at our policies, make sure we're attending to the equity we hold dear, but also to the intellectual and socio-emotional health and growth of our students. And remember that progress will only happen at the pace of trust. Thank you.
And now we'll take applause.
Hi, I just want to thank everyone for staying and for coming out. Last week, I had the honor of having dinner with a former governor of the state of New Jersey who said democracy doesn't work without an informed public. And you're certainly here showing that democracy can work. And before we leave, I would be really remiss if I didn't thank my sister from another mother, Donna Ward, who is the president of the League of Women Voters of the Montclair area. She did most of the heavy lifting here. And we greatly appreciate her. So thank you so much, and don't forget to vote on Tuesday, November 7th. Thank you.